Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Alex LeMay is a digital series showrunner from Los Angeles. He creates and produces web series for Universal Studios, YouTube Red, Maker, Go90, MSN, Xbox, and more. In addition, he runs a consulting business that helps working filmmakers, production companies, and studios grow their audience and drive revenue. He recently sold one of his web series and digital experiences to Sony Pictures for Sam Raimi, Spiderman Trilogy / Oz, The Great and Powerful, Evil Dead, and Joshua Donen, House of Cards, Social Network. His latest project has him showrunning the thriller web series CHIMERA, with Jim Uhls, writer of the film Fight Club. I direct your attention to the stage.
Thank you, Sid. Thank you very much. Wow, that guy sounds like he's got an okay career, man. I want to thank you guys first off. My wife got a real job as opposed to my crazy career that has dragged me all over this country, all over this world, and I'm grateful for it. But I want to talk today about kind of if your intention is to create content that you want people to see, and it's beyond a hobby, then what do you need to do to make that happen for yourself, right? And I want to start kind of with a few questions, if you guys don't mind me asking. Who here wants to make filmmaking and content creation their life's work?
And what remains.
That's great. That's right. That's all right. And you got a whole lifetime ahead of you, brother. And all right, so we've got some serious folks here. And how many people feel like they're on the outside of the industry looking in and maybe don't feel like you have a way to get your stories out? Okay. And how many people are looking, this will stop, I promise you. How many people want to find a way to find predictability, both financially and audience-wise, and from a funding standpoint in their careers? Okay, so I'm glad to see, because there is so many ways to do this, and I want to start with the sort of state of the industry. Where is it now? So many people who go to film schools are taught kind of the Francis Ford Coppola 1972 model of come up with a good idea and they'll find you. Or come up with a good idea, have your script under your arm, and run from studio to studio and pitch your stuff. It doesn't happen that way. Hollywood back then was run by filmmakers. It was run by people who loved storytelling. And now it's run by Harvard MBAs. I'm not trying to crap on Hollywood. I'm not trying to say that it's not a great place to work if you do it right, or a great place to partner with. It's just that one has to realize that now with the advent of the internet, we all know that disrupted it. I'm not telling you anything new. We all know that tipped over the apple cart, right? And the thing that they look for is safety, because if you take away all of the sexiness of the cameras and the pretty people and all of that stuff, all of the action and all of the cool stuff we get to do, it's really a manufacturing business, right? It is just like a fine laminate flooring business. They have the same interests. It's about revenue, and the way they make that is by selling ad units or movie tickets, or both, usually. And so they want to, and I'm not talking about making the next Avengers. I'm talking about any picture. And there are three kind of categories. There's the under 5 million, which could be a $200,000 web series, or there is the 12 to 60, and the 60 and above. Notice that there's no 5 to 12. There's no $5 to $12 million movies because the cost of advertising it is too big for the price they're paying for it, right? And so I don't want to get in the weeds here. I want this to be practical for people who live in Indiana. And I grew up here. I started making my first movies here. And I was a kid with a camera just like all of us. I was a kid with an idea, and I had these stories inside me that had to get out, right? And I decided early on that I started out as an actor. And for me, I love actors. But for me, I couldn't wait for somebody to tap me on the shoulder and give me permission to do something. We've never lived in a time now where we can broadcast to 1 billion people without any permission, without a license, without anything. And yet we have filmmakers every day who refuse to use that as the means of getting it out, or they get it out with that ubiquitous Facebook post, which we've all seen. Hey everybody, it's finally here, the trailer to my sci-fi thriller, Garlac the Shrub Monkey and the Tongs of Narg, right? I didn't even know you were making it. So how am I supposed to invest my time into that? We all have choice on the internet. It's a choice-making machine. We don't buy a pen unless we consult the internet. We don't have a wedding. We don't take a trip. We don't go to a hotel without consulting it. So why aren't we using it for our filmmaking career? Not to broadcast the whole film, or yet another behind the scenes, or yet another idea about, hey, here's a great way to do rack focus. That's everywhere, right? So it becomes part of the mush. So the thing that I task people who work with me, not just on the production side, but who are my clients, is that they have to turn over the apple cart. They have to make some noise. And most people, and I'm a Midwesterner, we're not the kind that toot our own horn very well. Yet, nobody else is going to do it. Nobody else is going to do it. So we have to create, essentially, before we shoot frame one, we have to give the world context for why our work is important, because every single person's work in this room is important. The fact that you dig these ideas out of your head, what other business model has 3 o'clock in the morning, your eyes open, and you come up with this wacky idea about a volcano and a nun and and you've put all these crazy things together, or a room that this guy needs to torture somebody in, right? Like, who comes up with that stuff and then sets out for the next year to make that real? And to take an idea, it's gas, it's mist, it's a ghost, it's nothing, and turn it into something that people can watch and enjoy. Nobody. We're the ones who get to do that. So, in order to do this, no matter at what level you want to do it, you can't be the person who walks into a room and says, what do you need me to be so that I can make my picture? I'll be anything you need me to be. You need to walk in that room and be a game changer. You need to say, my work affects these exact people. I know who my audience is, and I've been communicating with them for months, even years. My whole career is built on an audience I built back in 2010. And because I had that audience, I sat at the buying table differently. They wanted me. I didn't have to go, I know a guy who knows a guy, and then it's this random faceless dude or dudess is out there that's gonna save my life. We now live in a time when you can control your own career. You can create. You just have to say something worth saying. You have to say something that you believe is important, Because if you think it, there's 5 million people out there that also think it. Production is 20% of what we do. So why do we spend all our days trying to get to it? And then the other 80% of the time should be dedicated to something completely different. It should be about the dirty word promotion. But promotion is, Martin Luther King promoted. He changed an idea, right? He changed an entire culture because he marketed his idea. So it's not a bad word. It is simply giving people context for what is important about your work. So this is what I'm trying to say. 9 months before you decide to shoot. Now I know that's a little late for some of you because you guys are already in pre-production and production. And 9 months before you start doing it, start giving context to people. Start asking questions. Hey, I'm putting together this film and I'm thinking about something that looks like this. Does that make sense to you? Watch what comes back. Those people that respond, those are your fans. Those are the early adopters. It's just like this thing. Before cell phones came out, or when they just came out, not everybody wanted one. But all of a sudden now you can't live without it, right? So those early adopters, we did a project that we sold, the one we sold to Sam Raimi, where we created a ruckus online. We created this weird Scientology-like infomercial that nobody knew was real or not real. And people started passing it around going, what is this? And it led to a website with a countdown clock on it that said, when this clock runs out, your life will change. Give us your email. 125,000 people. When they put their email in, they got kicked into this experience of this weird nanotechnology world with these two factions, one kind of low budget hacker, the other sort of slick and really well advertised. And we created a blur between reality and fiction. We started bringing in the company that allowed us to do this, started bringing in fake employees of a real company. So do you see what I'm saying? That's tipping over the apple cart. That's getting people to choose sides. That's getting people to say, I want to be the scrappy hacker. Oh, I want to be the baddie, right? Everybody wants to be the baddie, right? So all I'm saying, you don't have to do that. But all I'm saying is you have to stand for something. You have to write something online every day. You have to put a video about the themes of what your film is resting on, not the mechanism of it, not the how. Because that's everywhere. I have a client who was literally lost, could not get her work out there, and walked into a room, finally got a pitch, and she knew who she was at that point because we had discovered exactly who she was. We discovered what her work did as a total, not as a project. Because when I sit on the buying side a lot, so we buy content, and I hear and then. I get a grocery list of sort of product features of the film instead of what's at the heart of it. And she said, when she walked in, they go, what kind of work do you do? She goes, my work helps people exchange fear for hope. Way better than I'm a comedy writer. Get in line. So I'm going to say some things today that are probably about, killing some sacred cows here, right? But the reality of it is it isn't what you think it is. It isn't, if I just make this piece, I'm going to get discovered. You have to now force discovery. And the internet is the tool to do that. You have to have an opinion that is narrow, not broad. You need the smallest audience possible, the most pointed audience possible. I know who my audience is, right? We did a sci-fi thriller that ended up getting picked up by Sony. We didn't ask for permission to do that, right? And because we built an audience, they had to pay us they had to allow us to keep merchandise. Right? Who else did that? George Lucas. So if I get some toys out of this thing, I'm going to be really happy. Right? So my point is that because we built an audience, we sat at the table differently. They couldn't deny us. They needed the audience more than we needed them at that point. Because if they don't move the needle, if they could film a ham sandwich for 2.5 hours and sell advertising against it, they would. It sounds horrible, but that's business, right? This is a business. We can talk about the art all we want, but at the end of the day, the art is the art. The way they look at it is a given. That has to be there. Talent has to be there, otherwise you're not sitting in the room, right? Saying something that hasn't been said before has to happen. Look, we've seen 200 and some Dracula movies over film history. Why? It's a great story, but it's 210 different directors all coming at it from a new way. They'll keep making Dracula movies. So it doesn't matter if your idea has been done before. There isn't an original idea. I hate to say that. It's just cobbling together. It's putting your work at an intersection that's never been put together before. So to step out of the example of the movie industry and go into kind of, the internet world. Uber, it's a car sharing service, right? Not when electric cars come. They knew this was coming. What's it going to be? You and me trapped in a windowless box with screens in it. It's an advertising platform. They realized transportation and advertising could be reinvented. So how do we do it for our movies, right? How do we take two things that should never belong together and make them into this stamp of us, right? It can't be stuff that is made because you think people, this is what they want to see. Yet. It has to be made from you. The real you is way more interesting than the mask we all want to put on to be tolerable or pleasing to people, right? But after that, we have to listen to our audience because that's who we serve. Cooks cook for themselves. Chefs cook for other people, right? So we got to cook for other people. We got to be of service to them. We have to give them value. We have to leave more value than we take. So that when they see our stuff, they're saying to themselves, what I get from this is way bigger than the time I dedicated to it. They pay you with their time first. Then when they're around you, they'll buy the t-shirt, they'll buy the mug, they'll turn over every rock, they'll share your stuff. I am not talking about being an internet superstar. I'm talking about showing people who can make decisions that the math works right. Look at what Joel did with nothing. What if we gave them something? Right? I can sell this. They understand that because if it's just a good idea you come to them with, right? What they're going to say is, that is awesome. Here's $5,000, right? We're going to buy the option. Now you think you're in. They don't want you. They want your idea. So how do you make yourself inextricable from that idea? You let them know that what you do is difficult to achieve. What is it that each one of you does that's difficult to achieve cinematically? Have an answer for that, because they'll ask you that question. And I'm not saying, right now it must seem like you're far away from those rooms. You're not. Right now, never has there been more content available to humanity ever. So to give you a statistic, I think it's something like 500 hours per minute is uploaded to YouTube. There's more information on the internet than in all of human history. It's the entire knowledge base of humanity. And how can we use it to tell stories to people that they want to watch? It's us. They fall in love with us. If they fall in love with us and our ideas, they fall in love with everything we make. So if we start saying, I'm Alex, I make movies. I was researching something for a screenplay I'm writing, and I came across this phenomenon. I want to know if anybody else has this thought. And all of a sudden now you're letting them in to how you think. Now they get to know you instead of just watch my stuff, right? Watch my stuff, damn it. I'll take a like from anybody. So if I'm making sci-fi and all of my audience is into gardening videos, what am I going to get from that? And I never took the time to go out and find out who would like my stuff or even if they would like it. So what I'm going to do is get a few $1,000 from my rich dentist uncle. I'm going to make a complete thing without ever knowing if anybody wants it or who even would like this, and lob it over the transom and go like this. And maybe a couple Facebook posts. And then when it doesn't happen, we tell ourselves, oh, I'm a failure. No, you're not. You're not. What it is just there's a couple things you can do to change the trajectory of your careers. If you're serious about this, there's no plan B, dudes. There's no plan B. When I was 18, I was all in. I burned the ships. I was never going to be able to be an accountant. I was never going to be able to be a mortgage broker. I'm not saying quit your jobs, but you got to think about how you can go all in. You got to think about what this means to you and how you can dedicate yourself to it. The big equalizer for filmmakers today is having an audience. And there are two kinds of audiences. There's wide and deep. Wide is that I'm a YouTuber, I have 3 million people, I can guarantee that 20% of them are going to watch, I can predict that, right? And so can advertisers. Then there's deep, right? And those groups tend not to take a lot of action around that content, they just absorb it. But deep audiences, you could have a 5,000 person audience and get sponsorship and get your stuff paid for if they are taking multiple actions, right? That's a deep audience. That means that everybody is interested in what you're doing and they like it, they comment, and they share. And if everybody's doing that, what does that do? They start seeing, this may not be a big audience, but you know what? These people love this guy. Love this woman, right? And so if you can pull them in rather than push it at them, make a pull mechanism rather than a push mechanism. Everybody's sold to all day. They don't want to be sold this obscure idea from Indiana. They don't want it. What they want to be is attracted to something. So create the attraction by talking about the issues that are central. Own the issue. Don't own the film. Does that make sense? Because when I own the issue, I have multiple revenue streams. So if I own the issue of marriage, let's say, I can do a TED Talk about how to have the perfect marriage. I can write a book. I can make a movie. I can have a YouTube channel. I can have a Twitter account. I can have an Instagram account that are all monetizing. So own the subject matter. You can't be everything. So when I get people who come in and I ask them, well, what kind of creator are you? And they say, well, I like everything. You know, I can go across genres and I can be I love comedy, I like thrillers, I like horror. And I can't buy that person. I can't purchase their services because they don't know who they are. What they're really telling me is, I will be whatever you need me to be so that I get a check from you. I'm going to spread my net wide so that you think that I'm prepared. The Same thing happens in pitching. Going in with a 3.5 pound Bible with brushed aluminum cover and schematics and, you know, 3 years of backstory, right? You're selling them work. What they really want is the cartoon version, right? They want that first grader version. They want the highlights. Then they're going to come in and say, green light or development deal or sponsorship or whatever. Can you make that Bible for us? But don't put your time into things that aren't going to get you anywhere. I sell probably 95% of my stuff without an agent. And the way I do it is by making it dog simple so that a first grader could understand it. I know how to write a log line, right? And that's the thing that gets them first. Then they read the 1 paragraph synopsis. Then they go to the deck, the PowerPoint version of it. And they get who the stakeholders are, a longer plot, genre, necessary locations, series arc, which is just 3 paragraphs of where this is going. They won't buy a single unit. They won't buy a single piece. They want to know if you're making a web series, they want to know there's 3 seasons in it. Because they don't want you to disappear. They want to be able to monetize this until the wheels fall off, right? If you're making a feature, they want to know it can go somewhere else. They want to know it could possibly have a TV life, or it could have a offshoot, or it could have a sequel, or it could have some, even on small pictures, right? So if you're making cool, you know, intimate pictures, have it have a life, have it appear that there's a life of beyond the ending. Leave them asking questions of where it could go, right? So I'm going to harp on audience building, and I'm going to harp on you guys are the best people to do that for yourself. Hiring internet people and all that, that's not necessary. It's go in and talk about the subject of your film and the themes of your film in a way that is personal to them, right? And the people who are responding, that means it resonated. Now you can start asking those people questions, right? They say, this really, you know, resonated with me. I don't think anybody's ever said, I hear this all the time. I don't think anybody's ever said that. You read my mind. That's interesting. Thank you so much. What was it about this article or this post that you found interesting? Well, I'm going through this. Now all of a sudden, this brings in kind of a thing that blew my mind when I figured it out. People watch content to soothe pain. It's sad to say. Why do you think kittens and babies are the most watched thing on the internet?
Because they're so cute.
They are, but it soothes people. What's it soothe them from? Pain. Crappy relationship. Job they hate that they never intended to do for themselves, right? We are the people that are living life out loud. We are the people that are doing this intentionally. Don't think your work is an accident. Don't think your work is something that just got lucky. Luck doesn't happen in this business. Luck does not happen. And the other thing, and this is a biggie, there's no lifeboat coming. There's no lifeboat coming. There's not a person out there that's going to save your life in this business. The person that is going to do it is you. I still fight to get projects made. The Duplass brothers still fight to get things made. Steven Spielberg and George Lucas have to sit outside the office of a 29-year-old kid who has a $500 million movie fund. Lucas could not do Red Tail, so he paid for it himself. Lincoln was not going to get made, so he gave it to HBO. It was also almost going to be on HBO, and it ended up becoming a movie because he threatened to give it to HBO. It was almost never going to be out there, right? And so, just because they're Steven Spielberg, just because, you know, they're Fincher, just because it doesn't mean they snap their fingers and they get a movie. They don't. They fight every day for it. So the lifeboat ain't coming. There's no cavalry coming over the hill to save you. And there's no person out there that has your best interest in mind. They have their best interest in mind. Right? Hollywood is built by scared people. It's built by people who are afraid of losing their jobs. So no is easy. No, they fight another day. Yes, I got to go into my boss's office, say, well, you know, there's this guy named Tim, and he's got this picture, and it's brilliant. He does these crazy movies about other movies. And we got to work with this guy. Okay, well, who's in it? Nobody. Okay, what's his audience like? What's his social following like? Or what kind of impact has he had? What market impact has he had? Well, none yet, but I'm telling you, this guy's amazing. Okay, how much does he want? He wants $3 million. I can't give it to him. It's too risky. We like his idea, let's give it to our friends who can make this happen. We'll buy it from him for $5,000 and send him on his way and say, thank you very much. And when we make it, we'll give you another $5,000. Right? Now, a year of your life is out and you got $10,000. It's a lot of money, but it's not worth the time and effort you put into it. So you don't get rewarded for your time and effort. You get rewarded for what the market says you are. Who's the market? Your audience. Their audience. And so on the buying side, we would collect audience. We would buy a mediocre film, but it had 45,000 people that watch it in 30 days. We'd buy 1.5 million from this piece of content that was great. We'd buy another, 250 from this. By the end of the day, we moved the needle a quarter point. Right? That's how they think. But we as creators can't think about, we can't think about the business interest of it all the time. We have to make the art, but the art has to have a function. This idea of a starving artist, I'm going to ask you guys to break that. If it is that you got to suffer, or there's not enough to go around, or any of that, there is more money out there for unknown content that made an impact than I can shake a stick at. There are too many places that need content. So that executive who just went into his or her boss's office and asked for the $3 million for somebody who didn't have a following or didn't have a name talent attached, they are caught in a conundrum. They say no too many times, they haven't brought in a hit. They say yes to too many things that fail, they're busted. So if any of you guys read Variety or Hollywood Reporter, you notice that executives change like we change socks. They're leaving because of that equation. Right? So in order to make an impact again, it's about doing it intentionally. It's about knowing what you make, why you make it, and not waiting for the accident, right? Let's take, the why is so much more important than the how and the what, right? Let's take Apple computers, right? Simon Sinek, this author, talks about this a lot. IBM came out and said, we make computers that will help your business. Buy our computer. They were the only game in town. I guess I'm buying an IBM. Apple comes along and says, we believe in creativity. We believe in turning over the status quo. We happen to make computers. Buy one of our computers. Which one would you rather have? Which one would you rather buy? Apple isn't that much better, if at all, than Microsoft. They just told a better story. So storytelling is the most important. Ideas are dangerous. Ideas are things that can go one way or another, but they change things once they're released, and there's no getting the genie back in the bottle. So if your ideas have intention, and you put in energy towards them, and you bring them to life, then why let them die on the vine and just say, I finished? Because you didn't. What you did was you made an expensive paperweight. And none of us got to see your work because you didn't take the time to run the business of it. This is a business. And if it sounds a lot less romantic than I'm going to be the artist going out there drinking espressos and smoking smokes and screaming from the top of the hill that you don't understand me, right? We can help a lot more people if we handle this like a business, right? We can help a lot more people. So this horror genre piece that you're making, that's got themes in it that are universal to humans. We're all afraid of something. You're just bringing it up to the surface. And so if we can talk about what those themes are, we can talk about that we all like being a little scared, but not too scared, right? And we're all afraid of something. And if we can pick at that little sore tooth and have somebody see themselves, because when people watch content, they insert themselves into it. When that character misses the bus, they miss the bus, right? So when that flower is up there, it's a flower. It's not a picture of a flower, right? And so we have a deep, deep psychological, the hero's journey is there for a reason. It's everything from Annie Hall to Gladiator. Gladiator is obvious. Annie Hall, how? Hero is kicked out of his ordinary world, right? Forced call to action, has to seize the sword so he can slay the dragon. Annie Hall in that conversation at the end is he's alone. He can only fight this fight on his own. Annie Hall is the dragon, right? So everything has that. And why? Because we as humans need deep psychological triggers hit in stories. Asians and Eastern storytelling, much different. But Western storytelling, it's all based on a fairy tale. It's all based on a fairy tale. And if we know intentionally that that's what we're doing, we can do that on purpose. I'm not talking about film theory here. I'm talking about getting into somebody's soul. And if we're not trying to get into somebody's soul, then we're wasting our time. I don't care if you have no intention of doing this for the rest of your life. If you're going to take the time out of our short, short lives to make something, then you have to give it what it's worth. Does this make sense? I hope I'm not. So, I think that one of the myths is that Hollywood is a place, and it's not a place anymore. We just gave $2.5 million at my last job to a 17-year-old kid in North Carolina because he was brilliant and he created these little pieces of content. Don't make the whole thing. He created these little bits of content that moved people, that had people talking, that got passed around in a fairly small group, but enough to say, wow, that took hold very quickly. What does he want to do? How can we kind of put that, reservoir of unbridled talent through a structure that is going to condense it and make it more potent and more powerful? So every single person here, it isn't a guessing game. It's not luck. It's not some dude or dudess coming over the hill and telling you you're talented. You have to now start saying, because there's too many. Everybody's a filmmaker now. Everybody's got a DSLR. So the cost of production, if your idea is to start a production company, that's rough. And I'll tell you why. There's a company called Husky. Husky Video, you give them $435 a month on a subscription service, and they'll edit anything you want. Send it off to the Philippines. So your specialty, when I used to shoot on film, that was a world-class professional coloring my stuff. Storyboards. storyboards, we had to pay $100 a frame, right? And now, because there's all these programs around, that world-class talent has just been democratized. It's not a bad thing. It's change. You know, we now know disease is not caused by a small dwarf living inside the stomach, right? We don't drive around in big, heavy, gas-guzzling cars anymore. You know, even the big ones are efficient, right? We don't do a lot of things we used to do. So it changed. So how can we use those to our benefit? How can we go about doing that? So I'm going to ask some more questions here. I want to go around the table. What is the biggest struggle? What's the thing that keeps you up at night about filmmaking? And if we can just give a sentence or two.
I just have too many ideas in my head, and I want to get them out for anybody to see, because I know I'm always looking for new stories and things to really connect to. And if I can do that for somebody else, well, that's a great feeling to have somebody take something more from something that I've made or given out or created or something.
Love it. And so take me to the perfect future. What is that? What is, let's just say 2 years from now, money isn't the issue. What does your life look like as a success?
Just changing people's lives, whether it just be the way they think or just daily activities, just something about my content or something that I put out there that just affects them in a way that just changes them.
Good. How about you? What's the thing that keeps you up at night about your filmmaking career and where you want to take it that isn't happening?
I would say right now, location for acting classes.
So what is it about that?
Well, right now with my work schedule, it's hard to make night classes for me, so I'll go to Chicago on the weekends. But
So acting is it's the same thing. Like promoting in the acting world is even more. And it's not any longer sending a headshot and a cover letter. It's, you can draw attention to yourself as an actor in a much different way, in a much more authentic way, in the you way, instead of, what do you need me to be so I get to roll, right? So that's interesting. So what's success look like for you?
taking many classes and being have a lot of roles in films.
All right, so getting cast and doing that. How about you? What's the thing from a producer standpoint that keeps you up?
Too much to do in too short a time.
Okay, so
Thanks, Casey.
so would that be that success looks like you have a team of people
Oh yeah.
doing the stuff that you need done and that you can kind of keep your head up instead of going down like this,
Yeah.
right? So this is what I want to say, right, is that the problem is here. Your destination that you guys just explained to me is here. Now, what are the barriers that are stopping you from getting there? If I were you after this talk, I would go home and write the 5 barriers that are stopping you from getting where you want to go. What are the 5 things that are stopping you? And then go out and hunt for the solutions to that, right? Mine was I didn't have access to a buyer network. I didn't have access to agents. I didn't have access to anybody. I didn't have money to make my stuff. That was the easy ones. The other ones was that I didn't believe that my work had value. It was an internal thing. More internal for me than it was external. Because those, all the hows and the whats and the whos, they were all there. I was the biggest limiting factor to my career than anybody else out there. Because of the belief system I had. There's not enough to go around. You know, I'm not good enough. They hate my sweater. Right? So how about you, Joel? What's the thing from a filmmaker standpoint that keeps you up at night?
Distribution.
So how you get it out there. So making it isn't the issue. It's about how do I get people to see it and get paid for it. Okay, so what does success look like?
Prolific library that's accessible to Whoever
So-
wants to see it.
You want to be a prolific filmmaker.
Absolutely.
That's how you have to think, people. I wanna crush this stuff. I wanna crush this. That's how you have to think. That's the thought process right there. Is I want to be prolific. I want people to see my work, not because he's an egomaniac, because he has something to say. We were all told to shush as kids, especially here in South Bend in the Midwest, right? We were all told to be quiet. Wrong people, wrong group of people to tell to be quiet as a group of filmmakers, right? So this is where I want to get you guys to know what your real problem is, right? Yes, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I just finished writing a feature-length film,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm hoping, praying, anticipating, it will be the faith equivalent to Fireproof Breakthrough War Room. It looks at shining a light on how to overcome racism within the faith tradition. And so I've just finished writing it, and I'm about to get it out there right now. So that's what's keeping me.
Great. And then what? Like, paint the picture, transport me to the day, to the perfect day in your successful life. What's that look like in your successful creative life?
When instead of writing ad copy, which is what I do every day, I'm writing movies.
Give me more.
I'm writing movies which make a difference, which turn heads, which causes people to say, I never saw it that way before. And hopefully entertain, but also change some perspectives, change some minds. Because I have some other ideas as well, which I want to do.
Yeah. Realize, people, that everything you're working on right now is a project. It is not the project. You have to create a business means that you have to be able to repeat this over and over and over again, right? And you always have to come up with that fresh idea. You know which movie kills more filmmakers than any other? The second one. The second one is what kills more filmmakers than any other. Because what they tried to do was live in the past and reproduce what worked, right? It's just like being an actor. Opening night on stage when I was an actor, we would crush it. It was a little sloppy and bump and grind, kind of like the Rolling Stones, was less Beatles, right? But we were having so much fun that the audience had fun. Second night, we were living the night before. We were trying to reproduce what worked yesterday. So it's super important that you stay in your moment and meet your audience in theirs. That makes sense? Your audience comes to you for a reason. Something sparked them to jump into your world, even just for a second. So when they're there, right, meet them at that moment when they're purchasing you, which is with their time first. Meet them in that moment. Know what their journey is to get to you. Study that. Study who you're making this for, right? My consulting company, right? My consulting company, I know who my clients are. They're mid-career filmmakers who started their career eagerly with the idea of making a certain kind of work, and now they're pointing cameras at CEOs' heads talking about phosphorus prices or tensile strength of graphite. And they start looking back and they go, it wasn't supposed to be like this. The money isn't enough for me to show up anymore. So if you guys want to do this for real, I'll say it. Quit anything that doesn't look like the work you want to be known for. Stop making anything that isn't the thing. Your stuff, the faith-based content right now is massive. Massive. And if you put 1,000 days from today into selling that screenplay plus having 3 more, because when they say, this really didn't write for us, what else you got? You better have something, right? So have at least 3. But anything that doesn't look like the kind of work you want to be known for, don't do it. Because then what it does is it confuses the pie. It's like, I see that you got a comedy here, I see that you got a commercial here, I see that your reel's a little bit of a patchwork, hodgepodge of whatever, right? I don't know what I'm getting here. Why do you think when you see commercial directors, those commercial directors do one thing? You know those car guys? Guys who make all those pretty car pictures of the sunsets in the desert? They only do that. They get paid a gajillion for it. And so you need to be able to tell the cinematic version of that, right? So when I was doing unscripted stuff, they would ask what kind of stuff I did, right? I make content about hard-to-reach people doing exceptional things in hard-to-reach places. And so what was that? That was extreme athletes that are weird and quirky and they don't want to talk to people, and they were climbing Everest. We did a 360 Everest piece for Sports Illustrated, and it was the first amputee to climb Everest, and that person didn't want cameras around. That person didn't want to do that, and Everest is impossible to climb with a film crew. So we made ourselves inextricable from that. I did not climb Everest, by the way. That was a whole other set of experts that did that. But I produced that, right? And so we knew how to do that. And so they knew how to buy me. When you're an expert, you're easy to buy, meaning pay. You're easy to collaborate with. And you're easy to sort of subcontract, right? Hire to do a big, expensive task. So if I go to LA and I get hired for that YouTube Red thing, they had to pay me $15,000 a week because they knew that I would deliver that. Because it was a lot easier to pay me 5.5 weeks at $15,000 than to guess whether it was going to get delivered on time or on budget. So they'll spend the money for a guarantee. Experts are guarantees. I don't make that money anymore. I still work for a living. That was a good one. But my point is this, is that I bring that up because that's possible for you guys. That's real. That's not 6 years from now. That could be done in a year. You could start getting that recognition in a year if you start focusing about the exact thing you do and be able to articulate it in a sentence. If I can say anything, it's say your strategy in a sentence. I found myself shooting that YouTube Red thing under Meg Ryan's apartment. She was having a party, and I am on the elevator with Steven Spielberg. He said, "Oh, what are you guys making?" So I told him what we're making. What kind of stuff do you make? There's the question. What do I say? Well, I like the baby. No. I had said it so many times I knew exactly what to tell him. And he knew. What is it? An elevator pitch. Literally. Right? That is Steven Spielberg didn't just go, "That's interesting." He said, "That's interesting. Tell me more about that." Because I piqued his interest. When somebody says, "My content exchanges fear for hope," yours, right? That begs it. You can't leave that alone. You can't leave a statement like that alone. So what is your one word, your one sentence? What is your strategy? What is your one thing that your content does? So if I can tell you the trick to it, it's who does my work affect? So who's it for, right? Who does it help, really? And through what mechanism does it help them? So my content helps this kind of person achieve this. My content helps X achieve Y through Z. And if you can create that structure and say that every time people ask you, now you've defined yourself. Because if you let Hollywood define you, what they're going to do is shove you towards the middle, chain you to a desk, take all your best ideas, and get rich doing it. Right? I'm sorry I haven't been talking to this side of the room, but the side of the room keeps on looking at me. So I'll spin a little bit. So where do you guys go from here, right? Where does this lead? If you keep doing the same thing you're doing, not saying that what you're doing is wrong, it's just every single person here can get their work out there. There's just too much opportunity right now. And every single person can see a few zeros behind their salary doing it. But you have to, that saying, if you keep doing what you're doing, you'll always get what you always got, right? And you have a choice. It's hard, right? And so people are, and it's unknown. So you guys have to invest in yourself. You have to treat it like a business. If you don't have an LLC or an Inc., you don't have a system for turning a stranger into a fan, and you don't have a system for turning a stranger into a buyer, you don't have a business. You have a dream. And I've watched the Hollywood dream kill more careers than anybody. And I've watched it hurt a lot of people. That I'll tell you, and I'll be really honest. 18 years ago, it was so bad that I drank myself into oblivion. It was that important to me. And I hated myself so much because I always heard no. We weren't put on this earth to hear no all the time. And I had to finally just sit in the dark one night and say, how did I get here? And I ripped apart my career. And I looked at every little piece and I found out that I didn't know who I was or what I made. I didn't know that I deserved to impact the world. I didn't know that I was allowed to play big, right? And everybody here can do that.